Okay, welcome everyone. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes to join the webinar because it always takes a while for people to get on, get their devices set up. While we're waiting, my name's Emily McMillan. I'm the Chief of Campaigns at the National Office of the Union. Just want to welcome everyone before we formally start. A couple of things already, I can see dozens of people streaming in, so that is fantastic. As you're getting yourself set up, there's a few functions on webinars for those that have used them before or those people that are new to them. There's a chat function at the bottom of your screen. We encourage everyone to use it. Use it to firstly introduce who's here. We know that we're going to have a huge amount of delegates and members from across the country, from across all of our road transport yards. So say who you are, what state you're from, what your yard or company you're from, gives us an idea of exactly who is joining us tonight. But also, as we have discussions along the way, if there's questions that you've got, throw them in as well, because we'll try and answer them as we go. Or if there's things you're unclear on or things you're supportive of, pop that in the function as well. Thank you, Chris, for kicking us off there from TGE. So get that information in, give us a bell shout out as to who you are, where you're coming from, what state you're coming from, so we get a sense of what's going on. This is the first of these meetings tonight. We're doing another one for the West Coast people and some South Australians and Territorians as well later in the evening. But as I said, if you've got questions that come up during this call, use that chat function at the bottom so we can see what those are, and we'll try and get to those. And if we don't get to them in tonight's webinar, then we'll make sure that we answer them, come back to you at a later point with that as well. So as I said, my name is Emily. I'm just allowing everyone a couple of minutes to jump onto this before we get moving, and you all some time to introduce yourselves. And I can see that chat function filling up. So fantastic to have you all jumping online. So I'll just give everyone a moment. And for those people that are continuing to join, just a reminder to use the chat function to introduce yourself, and we'll go from there. All right, before I hand over to Richard Olsen to kick off proceedings, I would like to start the way that we start all of our TW meetings, and that's by doing the acknowledgement of country. And I'd like to acknowledge the lands on which we meet today, and everyone is obviously coming from different lands across Australia. For me, it's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation here in Sydney, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to urge everyone on this call and members across the country to heed the call of First Nations people who have asked for the support of the union movement to support a voice to Parliament to be enshrined in our Constitution. We know that parliaments have made laws and failed policies for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people for centuries, and a voice enshrined in the Constitution will give them a direct line to Parliament to give advice on laws and policies that directly affect Aboriginal people. Previous laws we've seen have often entrenched discrimination and disadvantaged, such as forcing First Nations people to work for free or below minimum wages over 2 centuries, and our unions fought hard against these laws and will keep fighting for what is fair. The minimum First Nations people deserve is that their voice be represented and listened to before laws and policies are made about them. For these reasons, the TW has committed to supporting the Yes campaign in the referendum, because we all deserve a voice. So thank you everyone for that. And let me start by handing over to our chair for tonight's meeting, Richard Olsen, who is the National President and New South Wales Queensland Branch Secretary as well. Over to you, Richie.
Thank you, Emily, and welcome to everyone to our first webinar of this kind for our union, and it is an important one. This kicks off our campaign for transport reform now. We're all here because we know how crucial it will be to get this reform through our Parliament and passed into law. This is our opportunity to make our industry fairer, safer and more sustainable. Today we'll share the campaign plans for the next few months, hear from some delegates about why they are in this fight, and give members the tools to be active participants in this campaign, because it will require all of us working together to win this reform. Congrats to everyone for joining the webinar today at this very important moment in time. But we should first acknowledge the tremendous work that has got us to this point, which our TW National Secretary, Michael Kane, will now explain, followed by a short video. Over to Michael.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. And before I even start, thanks not just for joining us, but thanks for all the work up to this point. It's your leadership, your activism, it's your real instinct and hunger for change that's got us to such an important moment in time. And this is a real moment in time. Let's just think about it for a second. We have the federal government, we have the Commonwealth Australian government that has made a commitment that it is going to empower the Fair Work Commission to be able to set minimum standards to ensure that the road transport industry is safe, sustainable and viable. That is really massive, because in order to ensure that it's safe, sustainable and viable, the Fair Work Commission is going to have to put significant work into stabilising this industry, including making sure that those that reap the economic benefit in this industry, those major clients, the major retailers, the miners, those behemoths that are grabbing the money from our companies and from us, it's going to have to make sure that they're held to account. And that is critical. And that is what you have been fighting for. We have been fighting for, not just in the last little while, but literally for decades now. So we've got an incredible opportunity to bed that down. We've been fighting for this since the mid-1990s. We knew at that point in time that our industry was really a price-taking industry. If we're an owner-driver, we take the price we're given. If we're a transport company, in many circumstances, even when we're very large companies, we take the price that's given by those at the top. We don't have a chance to negotiate. They just impose it. They say, we want you to do the work for this amount and we have to do it. Now that's not fair. Not only isn't it fair, but it leads to really dangerous outcomes and an industry that's in freefall. It's in destructive competition. It's cannibalizing itself in a downward spiral of companies that can't keep their heads above water. Even massive companies like Scott's Transport, you know, the biggest fridge company in the middle of really wealthy retail supply chains, couldn't keep its head above water. And that just demonstrates to us what a situation we're in terms of this cannibalistic, destructive competition. And so years ago, 2.5 decades ago, we said, in order to fix this industry, we've got to hold those at the top of our supply chains with the economic power that are reaping those dollars in. We've got to hold them to account. They've got to pay their fair share. They've got to take responsibility for ensuring there are safe outcomes and people are paid properly. And so we had our Woolies campaign, you know, the Woolies Bullies campaign, and we sat in the middle of George Street and around the country and called out to Roger Corbett, who was then in charge, you know, you've got to change the system, and some more colourful phrases as well that some of you may be aware of. But that was really critical, because eventually we got Woolies to heal. They started speaking constructively with us, and they kept speaking constructively with us when we shifted our campaign to Coles. Fighting Coles hard kept Woolies honest and talking properly. And eventually we got Coles to the table and they started talking constructively. And to keep both Coles and Woolies honest, we took our fight to Aldi. And of course, that's the site of our most recent protests, our Aldi stores and our distribution centres, because that's a company that's undercutting the market. And we're making these protests so visible publicly so that the community can see that it's not a truck driver that's at fault here. It's not even a trucking company that's always at fault, but it's those that engage them that need to be held to account. And of course, that economic squeeze from the top of our supply chain has been made much worse by the march of the gig economy. You know, we've had the Ubers of this world, but also the Amazon flexes that are right in the middle of freight transport, pulling the rug out from underneath our companies while they're being squeezed from the top. And they're doing that because they're engaging workers with no standards at all. You just tap on an app and all of a sudden you can go and bid for work at the lowest dollar. And it's a deadly recipe, but it's not only a deadly recipe, we know that. It's a recipe for absolute destruction of our industry, the industry that we've worked so hard to stabilise over many years. And we felt that, didn't we, in 2021 when we went into our majors negotiations, and even our major companies were literally coming to the bargaining table and they were saying to us, we have to put in place B rates and C rates. We have to slash your superannuation. We have to slash your terms and conditions. Why? Because we're being undercut by the gig economy, by the Amazon flexes of this world. And of course, all credit to many of you on this call. You stood up and said no. And we took strike action across hundreds of sites, thousands of workers, did protected action ballots across 9 companies. And we made it clear to these companies that no, this was not what was going to happen. We were not going to take the low road. We were going to draw a line in the sand and make sure that we had our standards stabilised in our major companies. And then we were going to require these major companies to come with us to lobby for change. And that's precisely what we've done. You stood strong in 21. You held those companies to account. Then those companies put their name on a sheet of paper with us and other industry players and went to the federal government at the Jobs and Skills Summit last year and said, we want change. We need change. And the federal government agreed. And that's the position we're in now. The federal government agreeing to put in place a system through the Fair Work Commission. In essence, to fill the void that was left when Cash and Turnbull reprehensibly tore down the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal in 2016 and put nothing in its place. Of course, since then, we've lost 307 of our transport worker colleagues on our roads in truck crashes, and that is just reprehensible. And so we know the opportunity's here. We know it's here because you, fought for it to be here. It's because of you that this government has made this commitment. And this government will table legislation in the coming weeks, coming months. When it's tabled, we've got to get the Parliament to pass it. We've got to get it through the House of Representatives, of course, but we've got to get it through a Senate. And we know that in the Senate, we will need crossbench support. And it's important that we keep our campaigning as visible and, quite frankly, aggressive in a positive way in support of this change that the federal government is putting up, so that the community can see that this is what's required, and that can be reflected and seen by the crossbenchers that we need to move to vote for this legislation. It really is a moment for us, and that's what we're here to talk about today, and I know we're talking about it in other forums across the union as well. We've got our convoy on the 5th of August. We've got continuing intense lobbying that we have to do, further trips to Canberra. And this is really critical because it's the pinch point. It really is the culmination of 2.5 decades of work of all of us on this call, and we have the opportunity to bring it home now. I'm confident we will. I am confident we will. I know we will win this. But we win it by making sure that we are present and that we're fighting, that we're getting the word out to everyone who's next to us in our yards, next to us on our roads, who we interact with, whether they're transport workers or not. We need to get them on board for this. This affects everyone. A sustainable, safe transport industry affects everyone in our community. And we're on the cusp of making real change. And that'll be real change for the country, for Australia. It'll be such a legacy for us all, but it's also going to support our job security. And it's going to mean this is going to be an industry that people can confidently work in, knowing that they're going to be safe, that they're going to be fairly remunerated, they're not going to be exploited, knowing that those reaping the economic benefit are paying their fair share and acting responsibly, and knowing that because we're going to force them to do that through the new system that we win together. So thanks, everyone. It's a massive fight ahead, but a massive dividend if we win, when we win. And I'm looking forward to working hard with you to fight for that win over the coming months. And now we're going, I think, to a video to celebrate where we've come to this point. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Union power! Union power!
2,000 Star Track employees across the country walking off the job in a 24-hour protest over job security.
But proudly swinging their union colours.
Union power! Union power!
This is the moment Toll Group truckies agreed to slam on the brakes.
These FedEx workers are fed up. They're demanding better pay and job security.
Union power! Burn! Union power!
From Perth
What do we want? Safe race! When do we want it? Now!
to our nation's capital.
Hundreds of truckies hit the road united in convoys today, demanding safer working conditions.
If workers in transport are not looked after, if they aren't paid enough, if they don't have the right terms and conditions, then they die.
The Transport Workers Union is demanding the federal government brings in a safe rates legislation to protect truckies from being overworked and underpaid.
The union says the Amazon Flex model, where contract labour is used to deliver parcels quickly and cheaply, is threatening the transport sector.
It's going to spread like a cancer throughout this industry. We need legislation to protect ourselves and protect the community.
A survey of more than 1,000 delivery drivers found around half are earning below minimum wage, with 81% relying on this income to survive. The majority also reported feeling pressure to take risks to get the job done, with some putting their personal safety on the line.
It's an unregulated market and it's out of control.
They pay us less and less and push us to make more and more delivery faster.
But the only way that this becomes sustainable across the market is if the federal government legislates to ensure that there is a minimum floor across this sort of gig transport work.
The only way to change the situation for these exploited workers is to use the building that I'm in right now and legislate, and that's what we'll do.
What do we want? Safe rates. When do we want it? Now.
Storming Aldi's offices, the Transport Workers Union wants it and other giant retailers like Amazon and Apple to sign a charter to guarantee driver safety and higher pay.
This is a national crisis, and it's a national crisis caused by corporate greed.
Greed, the union says, is sending others into liquidation, like trucking company Scott's, which sacked 1,500 workers. John Walters is one of them.
We need people to be held accountable, and accountable in the way that enough's enough.
They will be areas that we'll have to do further work on, allowing the Fair Work Commission to set minimum standards to ensure the road transport industry is safe, sustainable and viable.
We have hope now. We have some hope with a new federal government in place that has made a commitment to put in place regulation again. We want to make it clear to the Australian community that we are going to fight to ensure that regulation takes place.
What do we want? Safe rates. When do we want it? Now.
Look, thanks, Michael, and thanks for that video as well. That short video shows just a small part of this enormous campaign, which, as Michael has said, has been the making for decades. Now we have reached this critical point. I'll hand over to our Chief of Campaigns, Emily McMillan, to take us through what the months ahead would look like. Thanks, Em.
Thank you, Richie. And for those people that have joined us since I was talking earlier in the meeting, welcome. For starters, I see our numbers have jumped up again during Michael's speech and while Richie was talking. And for those people that haven't, used the chat function at the bottom to introduce yourself, say who you are, what site or what yard or what state you come from, because we've got people from all parts of transport right around the country. So great to see that. And make sure if you've got any questions, you're sending them through as well. Look, I've got the fun job of kind of joining from what Richard and what Michael has said, who really identified that we are in a moment of time at the moment. We have a real opportunity, and the next 3 months are crucial in what we're doing. And that's why we're bringing everyone together for this discussion. As Michael said, we've put ourselves in the best possible position to win this reform. We've got a commitment from the federal government. We've got the industry backing it. We've got a whole lot of stakeholders that have been oppositional before stepping up to work with us. But now we've got to get those parliamentary votes to bring about these law changes that we are so close to getting there. So I'm just going to quickly touch on 4 phases that are going to matter to us getting this over the line and what all of our role is in doing that. Because we want to control this debate for the next little while, and we want to make sure our message is out there and our positive push for reform is what everyone, the community, the industry, the media, politicians, and those crucial crossbench votes are hearing. So the first of those, I said 4 phases. The first one is the phase that we're in at the moment, which is the consultation with the government. So they're talking to the industry, they're talking to us, and congratulations to all of you for your work that you've been doing at the moment. There's been, dozens of you go to Canberra and speak to politicians directly and go to parliamentary offices and speak to them. You've been doing hundreds of Reform Now meetings across, and we just saw that photo at the end of the video of all your yard meetings that have been happening across the country. People here have participated in the Glen Sterl Senate inquiry and given evidence about what needs to change. And of course, Michael and your National Committee of Management have spent hours with departments and hours with politicians negotiating and really lobbying about what that legislation needs to look like. And in particular, over the last month, that's been some really intense work. The big piece, the big sort of jewel in the crown for what we're doing is this convoy on the 5th of August, and you will hear us all talk about that. So in your capital cities, and I'm going Perth, Darwin, Cairns, Brisbane, and I'll come back to Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and then Sydney will be going to Canberra, and we'll talk about this more later. There will be convoys on the 5th of August, and we need everyone to participate because it's going to be a huge media event, and we need to show that we are acting as one across the industry. So that Nick will be talking about that a little bit more later. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is when the legislation, which we're confident about, is going to be put to Parliament. We're hopeful that that's going to be happening in the next couple of weeks or months. The government has said that will happen by the end of this year or the second half of this year. So we want to put as much pressure on them as possible to make sure that is coming on board. And transport reform is going to be the kind of key part of that legislation, but there's going to be broader industrial relations reform as well with same job, same pay and other pieces that matter to us as well. So phase 1, conversations we're having with the government at the moment and the convoy. Phase 2 is when the legislation gets tabled and we need to show again that we're all acting as one. Phase 3 is after the legislation gets tabled, it's going to go to a Senate committee. At that, we're going to have to provide evidence yet again, but we will do that on why our industry needs this. And the more united we can be in what our message is and what we're saying matters. And we know this is when the opposition is going to heat up against us. And this is when we're going to see that opposition forces start to build like they have in the past. The likes of ATA will come out of the woodwork, and groups that represent the big wealthy clients at the top of the supply chain that don't want to be regulated are going to be loud as well. So again, we need to continue to show our broad support, and we'll be coming back to you with ways to do that. So convoy on the 5th, get ready for that opposition, and we've got to stay united. And then phase 4, which is the final phase, is the vote that'll happen in Parliament. So we know the government have said they're committed to voting for this. We know the Greens have committed, and we have all bar the final 2 votes that we need from the crossbench to get over the line. So this period is crucial because we are so close to having the votes that we need, and we've got to get those last couple of votes over the line. So to help us kind of talk about what our message is and how we're all standing together, I'm just going to hand over to a couple of workers who are going to talk about, the delegates that are going to be talking about their experiences. And I do want to do a shout out. I know we've got people zooming in from Linfox National Negotiations tonight and people zooming in from Toll National Negotiations tonight. So shout out to them. But first, I'm going to hand over to Travis, who is one of our BevChain national delegates, who is leading the way in the national bargains there as well, to say a few words. So over to you, Travis.
Thanks, Emily. But we have subcontractors and owner drivers being exploited by the transport company I work for on a daily basis because it's part of their modern business model. We've had enough. Like everybody else, we negotiate hard to get our conditions. We don't want to lose them. We need reform and regulation from the lawmakers to protect our job security and our safety out on the road. And we've got people lining up to join the convoy to Canberra. We can't wait for it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And good to have you on board. And on that note, I might hand over now to your colleagues that are from the Linfox group that are in bargaining at the moment. I know you've had a big day of bargaining today, so thank you for sticking around for this. But Peter and Hoodie, I'll go over to you guys.
Right. Thanks, Emily. We've fought hard together to lift pay and conditions, but we can only do so much in negotiations when the industry is being dragged down and threatened by the gig economy.
Peter Rekirk from Linfox as well, New South Wales. We do need reform, and we need it badly. For a long time, I've been thinking that it'd be nice if everyone was on, similar wages and stuff like that. And also knowing that we've got drivers going up the highway, getting paid the same and on the same conditions, relatively the same conditions, and it makes our roads a lot safer without knowing that they're not, racing to get to the next job because they need to, fulfill a time slot or fulfill a delivery or something like that. That pressure, taking that pressure off them makes it a lot safer for all of us on the road. So hopefully we will get this reform through, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you very much for everyone else's support out there as well, because it'll change our children's lives, my kids' lives, and other kids. People coming up in the ranks, it'll make their lives a lot easier as well. And so that'll do it for me. Thank you.
Transport is Australia's deadliest industry. We need to lift standards. Everyone needs to join this fight. Come to the convoy and talk to others in the industry about why this is so important. We need to do something. We need to be proactive, and we need to be there in front of the government and tell them that we have a message for them. And the message is we want a safer workplace. Thank you.
Thank you to all, and great contribution there by all. I'll now hand us over to a owner-driver, Frank Black. Frank, if you can take yourself off mute and come on.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, as an owner-driver, I constantly feel the pressure, that's put on us to do the job and to try and make a living out of this industry. And now with this gig economy flaring up, you can feel it creeping into our side of the industry even. So I really think that we need to all bind together, no matter what sector of the industry you're in, whether you're Uber Eats, whether you're a semi-trailer driver or whatever we are, we all need to bind together and talk to the rest of our workmates and get them to bind together with us and get this legislation through. It's the most important legislation we've had ever in this industry.
Thank you, Frank. Well said. Straight to the point. Finally, I'd like to also invite Nabin to the mic. Take yourself off mute, Nabin, and let's hear from a gig worker that their first-hand experiences.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Richard. Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm Navin Adhikari, gig worker, driver, gig food delivery driver from Canberra in industry for more than 4 years. As a gig worker, we face mostly due to the unregulated issues, due to unregulated industry, like no unfair dismissal tribunal and 24-hour fear of deactivation. Need to work longer out to sustain living. That is almost like working for more or almost 80 hours a week. And on the top of that, big portion of the driver are earning less than the minimum wage. In addition to that, they need to undercut safety. They need to undercut the safety. And how as a gig driver we are getting paid is by algorithm. So we don't have any control. Neither they are trying to control it. They are just leaving it as like, they can pay whatever. And this is how the gig industry looks like, and how it pushes the driver to undercut safety on the top of low pay. And this need to stop and regulated. As right now we see gig economy on rideshare and food delivery mostly, but it's gonna get to the different sector, and this need to be stopped.
Thank you, Nabib. They're just a few stories, but we know everyone in this call has stories of their own about why we need to win this reform. Over the next few months, it will be really important for you all to share those stories with your workmates, with others in the industry, on social media, with the public and with politicians directly. To take us through what the campaign would look like and how you can get involved, I'll introduce our National Assistant Secretary, Nick McIntosh. Nick.
Yes. Thank you. Excuse me. Thanks, Mr. President. And I can see the toll guys, Woody and Peter on, and I know that the Fox guys, I should say. I know the toll guys are in negotiations, and Travers is starting BevTrain, I think, in the next couple of days. So it's great to see everyone there. I also can see a lot of the NRFA guys have made their way on. So that's great to see them part of this fight as well. I thought I'd just go through a couple of really key things that are coming up in this fight. And I think Michael spoke at the start really well about what we need to do between now and the end of the year, when hopefully this is before the Senate. And of course, the really 25-year journey to take us to this point. And of course, the biggest thing that's coming up immediately are our national convoys on Saturday, the 5th of August. Now, every branch around the country is running one, and we need everyone to come along and bring your friends, bring your family. Let's really get a bit of a show for these people, because they do see it. The politicians watch these things. The public sees these things. And when people see a lot of trucks on the road, they do say to themselves, well, what is this all about? If truck drivers are up in arms, people have a lot of sympathy for truck drivers, particularly after COVID and the fact that we know that's what kept the country running. People will stop and they'll take notice of what our message is. So there'll be convoys in Brisbane, in Cairns, in Melbourne, in Adelaide, in Perth, in Darwin, and there'll be a Sydney convoy that will go all the way to Parliament House in Canberra. So we encourage you to both attend that and also the press conference afterwards, just to show how many of us are in this fight. And if you don't have a truck yourself, or if you can't get one from your company for whatever reason, then come along in any event. We've had before, and we've done convoys, people in cars, or people just come up at the press conference to the end and have a chat to everybody. The more the merrier. Let's show our support for this cause so that we can show the public and we can show the politicians. And we should remember that when we did this in July, about this time last year, we had a convoy around the capital cities in the country, and of course from Sydney to Canberra. Around about, I think less than a month later, was when we saw the government make that commitment that they would legislate to ensure a safe, sustainable and viable industry, a la the words and the recommendations of the now famous Sterl report over the last few years. And that was that video that we briefly saw of Tony Burke earlier, committing to that at the Jobs and Skills Summit. One of the only things that they said at that point they would legislate out of that summit. That's how powerful that was. So we need this convoy to be even bigger, to show all of federal parliament that we're for this reform, and this is an industry fight for reform and for progress, and to make sure our industry is safe, sustainable and viable for us all. Now, TWU branches have registration pages that you can go onto the website and click in. We'll send links out as well, I think, after this webinar, so that people can get involved. And this will be our first major action after tonight's launch. But of course, there'll be many, many more to come in the coming months, as we really need to ramp this campaign up. Secondly, we know everyone's been having conversations with each other. And it's important that we keep doing that, because the people that, who are listened to the most are the people that you work with. Myself or others can go out and say what we say, and, sometimes that's effective and sometimes that isn't. But when your workmate, when your delegate is saying it to you, it takes on a whole new meaning. And people have got a lot more trust in the people they know, and the people that they know are on their side. So after this webinar, you'll receive some tools, and that'll include messaging, some graphics you can share on social media for those that are on it, and that you can help use your voice in this fight to show that publicly. We've also got yard endorsements and photos. Many of you will know that over the last few months, we've been collecting from literally thousands of members, yard endorsement photos from around the country. And we're going to start from today and tonight, putting those on social media so that people can see how strongly this is supported. And there'll be more opportunities in the coming weeks to get yourself involved. So if you're on there tonight and you haven't been involved in a photo showing you support reform, or you don't think your yard has, contact your official. Let's get those photos. Better yet, take a photo yourself of you and your workmates supporting reform. But your officials have all of the gear and the signs to help you out there. And of course, social media we know is a big weapon in just about everything these days. If you search for us, if you don't know, it's TWU Oz You'll then be able to find us on most platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Of course, we're on, and you can keep an eye on the different posts we'll be making, and of course, take the opportunity to voice your support for this campaign. Because again, we know all of these people that make decisions look at this stuff, read this stuff, and see how strongly supported some of this stuff is. So it's really crucial that we get involved in social media as well. And we've kicked off tonight with a Facebook post on TWWAS about this campaign. So please go on there after this webinar and show your support on Facebook. So our focus until the legislation's tabled, which we don't know when that will be, but it'll probably be in the coming weeks, if not month or so. Of course, the focus is the convoy on the 5th of August, having conversations with our workmates in yards, and of course, sharing support on social media. And as I said, we'll be posting things every day on our Facebook page. So go and check that out. And then we'll need to up our game. Once it's tabled, once it's in the House, once everyone can see, including us, exactly what's involved in this legislation, we'll have another webinar and we'll talk through where we're up to in the next stages. And of course, Emily went through some of that earlier. So it's an exciting time, but it's a really crucial time to get involved in this campaign to make sure that we achieve this long-awaited reform. So in my closing comments, Rich, I just want to say this. As Michael said at the start, it's been a really long journey to get here. It depends when you want to say it started, whether it started with the Woolies or Bullies, whether it started before that point. But we can certainly easily clock 25 years to getting us to this point. Of course, more recently, as we know, Senator Sterle's 3-year inquiry, where he went around the country physically or virtually, depending on what was going on with COVID at the time. And many of the people listening made very valuable contributions, which has led us to this point in that inquiry, including, of course, a majority recommendation of Senator Sterle's 10-point plan, 3 of which really, the first 3 encompass what we're talking about tonight. Of course, we had a convoy this time last year. We'll do one again on the 5th of August, and we'll probably do another one during that crucial period at the end of the year. We've had Aldi actions, Amazon actions. We've been in Canberra. We'll continue to be in Canberra to make sure the politicians understand what it is that's at stake here. So thanks for continuing to show your support today and in every action you take. We'll be doing whatever we need to and we can to win in Parliament House, to win this reform. But to do that, we've got to do all of the hard yards outside, whether it's on social media, or it's turning up to convoys, whether it's talking to your workmates. That's what we need to do in order to win what is vital reform for our entire industry. Whether you're an employee and you're working for a company that needs to maintain viability, whether you're an owner-driver that's subject to some unfair contractual practices, or whether you're a gig worker like Nabin, who basically just has no regulation or standards whatsoever. We need this reform. We need to make sure this industry is viable, sustainable, and safe. So we've got to be the loudest over the next few months. We've got to keep getting out there, getting our message, responding to any criticism that we see, to make sure that people understand this is the fight that is right, that needs to happen for this industry. So congratulations on being here tonight. We'll be on the right side of history with this fight. If we work together, if we work hard, we will win, and we can have this legislation, this life-changing legislation for all of us by the end of the year. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Nick. I think that completes our webinar for part 1 of this. As Nick has said, there will be a further webinar later on to inform you once again of where this campaign is up to, what is our next steps. I want to thank all the delegates and rank and file members who have taken time to be here tonight, be part of this history-making webinar. As we have said, this is the first of its kind for our union. So we're going to get better on this and make this a real big event that we'd like to see many more people come on and have a listen. I certainly also want to take this opportunity to do a big shout out to our friends and other transport workers, in particular the NRFA, who have also shown up in strength here today, who also understand the importance of what this transport reform is all about. So once again, thank you to all. And I hope our Linfox and Toll negotiating team gets back to the bar very quickly and have a few and discuss what we've discussed here today. And let's work on it tomorrow around the table and get Toll and Linfox to the table even further to make this a real reality. So thank you once again. And I'll just finish on the note that August the 5th is only one day, but geez, it's going to last many, many decades if we get it right. And we can make sure that happens by every one of us getting out there on August the 5th and showing their support for it. Once again, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next webinar. Thank you.